Welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Today is Thursday, April the 8th, 2021, and their call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. Give Michael just a minute to get dialed in. I was not familiar with that particular Dr. Seuss book either, and so I looked it up, and it actually allows you to read a couple of pages in it. And it's amazing. I mean, it is like the opposite sides of every situation. And so I think I'm going to get that book and read it. Even though it's a child's book, I think there's something in that buttered bread for all of us to learn. And it's actually called the Butter Battle Book by Dr. Seuss. And welcome, Michael. What I was just talking about is Dr. Tim had mentioned a book. We were talking about, seeing things on, viewing situations from different angles, different sides. And the book that he mentioned that brings it out really good is the Butter Battle Book by Dr. Seuss. And one of the things is that us on this side of the wall, we're yucks. Those on that side of the wall are zooks, and it's time that you learned what they did wrong. And it's all about that they buttered their bread on the downside instead of the upside. It's like,
yep.
It's like
as
perfect.
Easy as it is.
Yeah. So welcome to the show.
The non-being mind can use any excuse to find somebody else to blame. So welcome, everybody, to the show. Honored and delighted that we get to be here once again to carry on this conversation. Been some long days happening and some long nights, lots of processing happening for us, and it's awesome, although sometimes can lead to a little fatigue. And fortunately, we've been taking more time to take care of ourselves. I actually get Jeannie to come in here once or twice a day and put her hand in the Avison and take a rest now. How cool is that? And I acknowledge you, Jeannie, for being more and more willing to take care of yourself. It's awesome.
Thanks.
And you're welcome. And deserving, as Dr. Tim would say. So the conversation moves forward into every angle of the non-functioning mind, the non-human mind, the one that we call carbon-based memory or ego, that simply replays whatever's in it. It doesn't matter what's going on or who's involved. The ego changes enemies like, you change socks. Today it's this person that's on the other side of the world that I hate, and tomorrow it's that little kid in the bed in the other room in my house. It's the one that I call my kid. I mean, anybody will do if a reality based in hostility or fear resonates and moves. So, while you're on the wrong side, you become the enemy. And it's just amazing to watch that play out and to realize that, it's really time in America where, there's so many people out there literally calling for civil war, arming themselves. It's like, let's get restored to human life. Let's get back to being functioning out of love and realizing that, the truth is we're all the same. We all butter our bread, unless we're vegans or are maybe avoiding gluten. Who knows? But anyway, lots of directions to take that conversation in. And we're still working on this idea of blockage of truth from the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? If you're following along with us, we're on page 53. And, we've gone through several topics in detail and recognizing that most people live in this dilemma of the realities that their mind constructs and convinces them are actually what's going on out in the world, leaves us in a pretty crazy place sometimes. And in that crazy place, oftentimes there's pain, and we think that the pain is caused by what's going on outside of us, when we realize that pain is just an energy alert that there's something going on inside of us that doesn't belong there, then everything begins to change. But there's a huge amount of inertia to overcome, to recognize that and to always function out of the recognition that my pain is internally caused, and I can put an end to it. Recognizing the power of words and how words cause our minds to use certain information to produce their perceptual constructs, which we call reality, and that when we pretend that we're not responsible for our own realities, we tend to project the content, literally, of our own brain cell structure into our brain's image of others, and they quite literally show up in our mind with our problem attached, except that we swear that it must be their problem. And my favorite tongue-in-cheek line there is, well, you'll notice if you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the one that was there every time. It's about you. It's not about them. And now we're into looking at and putting the request forward that we honor truth rather than live in blockage of truth. So we've been talking with the character Richard about this idea of blockage of truth and how we torture ourselves, we give away our power, we hide our power in our brain's image of others, and as long as we stand in that place of blame, we hold on to and make unresolvable the very core of our pain, the very thing that pain is trying to warn us about. When we engage in blame, we hide that from ourselves. And Richard is just at the point where he's starting to admit, okay, every time I've been through pain, boy, he's back and forth. I know it's me. I need to work through it. And then he asks for some drugs. That's where we finished off yesterday. He's like, I want coffee. Give me a cigarette. And we point out that Richard is holding his breath. One of the most profound things you can do in doing your work is simply become conscious of and pay enough attention to notice when you're holding your breath. And recognize, build the brain cells for that, what that means. Holding the breath means there's something I'm hiding from myself. There's something that I'm inhibiting from being used in generating my perceptual construct. And that's how we keep ourselves tricked and fooled. So I go on to say to Richard, when denial, projection, externalization, and holding your breath do not keep the truth hidden, and the drug hostility is confronted and made illogical, which is what we just did yesterday with Richard. As we've just done, made that hostility illogical, the mind prompts us to turn to some other form of suppression, some other way to dissociate, to shut down the content we don't want to look at. So I offer Richard some feedback, and notice your stress level's up. It's elevated because you're confronting something painful, your responsibility, and your belief in victimhood. I suggest that caffeine and nicotine are ways you suppress your emotions. If you use those drugs to relieve stress and block truth, chances are you're addicted to them. The effect of drugs is to assist you in hiding from the truth by keeping up your illusions and projections. They seem to protect you from your pain. In truth, drugs function as anesthetics, distorting the mind's output and disguising your pain while destroying the body. So, my background and training is in naturopathic medicine, and in naturopathic medicine, what we know is every drug is a disease disguised as a cure. Well, what do you mean, Michael? I know people that couldn't live without their drug. I agree, there are. But you'll notice how long they've been taking that drug that keeps them alive but doesn't heal them. If you had a substance that was truly healing, there wouldn't be an insert in the package that says if you take this, be careful because this part might break and that part might fall off and this part might not function and you might have a heart attack. Cancel the thought. But you listen on TV to the relentless list of horrendous things that can happen, to get rid of your pimple or whatever. And then you'll notice they always follow up with a suggestion. Check with your doctor to see if this is right for you. Like you aren't supposed to know what's right for you. Your doctor is. Excuse me. If you have not educated yourself enough to be your own primary health care provider, then you need to change something in your life and you need to start educating yourself. If, in fact, the substance you're being offered was a healing substance, then there would be an insert in the package, and the insert in the package would say things like, yeah, well, your hair's probably going to get shinier and less brittle, and your skin is going to be clearer and cleaner, and your bowels are going to work better, and your digestion is going to improve, and your heart function is going to – it's going to have a whole list of wonderful things that are going to happen. But when we get into treatment and we simply treat symptoms instead of offering people healing, then people settle for, okay, we found something in this narrow window that will make this symptom go away. Well, yeah, there may be 6 other symptoms that show up, but look at that. Look how successful we're. We got rid of that symptom for you. Well, that's true. We did tell you might have a heart attack as a result of getting rid of that symptom, but did you notice that pimple's gone? How cool is that? And the focus, the distraction is always about, well, look at what we did, rather than look at what's going on. And ultimately, we need to become responsible for our own lives, and part of the responsibility is you've got to stop hiding from yourself. You've got to stop hiding the truth. You've got to start being willing to honor truth, to let truth show up, and acknowledge that when you're in pain and disturbance and upset, you have a problem, though your mind will always tell you. And if you live in the standard mindedness culture, your mind will always tell you about and detail in great depth why somebody else is the problem in your life, why you should throw that someone out of your life, because look at what's wrong. It doesn't matter what you've done for them. It doesn't matter what you've given them. It doesn't matter how you've supported them. One little painful reality comes up that they're not willing to handle, and boom, they're gone. And they got a whole story about what's wrong with you. Pretty bizarre when you start looking at how this ego mind operates. And so we're here to encourage people to honor truth, own the truth, process truth, acquire the tools, acquire the infrastructure that supports the operating of your mind and your body and your emotions and your being as they're designed to be supported. And that's the whole purpose of our conversation here. And if you haven't engaged in the forgiveness process yet, we invite you to go to our website, whyagain.org. And in the upper left-hand corner, there's a button that says Start Here. Hit that button and start walking through all the instructions. We've got hours and hours and hours. And many people say, well, but can't you just give me the 3-minute version? I want to be finished with this issue yesterday. And I say, well, okay, let me just think about this for a second. You watched your mother and your father struggle through that issue. You heard how your grandparents on both sides struggled through that issue. You've been struggling with that issue for 50 years, and you want the 3-minute cure. Well, you're living in dreamland. It's going to take a commitment, and it's going to take work to clean up those generational patterns. And, I go back to the early days of doing this when nobody knew, nobody had the tools, nobody had the understanding. And I look at how much work it took to build the brain cells to come around to it, and how much easier it would have been if there had been someone I could have just had a conversation and said, well, what about this? And they could have gone, oh, here you go, and helped me to build the brain cells. Oh, would the process ever been easier? So we're here to make it easier for everybody who's willing to step up to the plate and do their work. So welcome. We appreciate having your ears with us. And if you hear something that's meaningful or especially would be meaningful to someone else, after each show is complete, we have archives that you can go to, download the show free, or create a link to the stored show and pass it on, share it with somebody else. And so, Miss Jeanie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
Chat room is quiet, but Susan has put her hand up again. She talked to Dr. Tim earlier, but yeah, so she is on. 610.
Hey, young lady.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Michael, thanks. I've been thinking about and working with your new Power Person worksheet and thinking about the class we had. You're reading through stuff and you're introducing us to stuff, and somehow, at least with me, I don't feel prepared to say anything until I've actually worked with the worksheet. And I started it this morning, like a fresh new worksheet. And so do you want me to save questions about that for...
No, go for it. If you're in the middle of it, if you're in the process...
Oh, I am. Yeah.
Rock on.
Well, in number 2, you say that... is this the latest one I'm looking at? Yeah, okay. You say... we start out looking at our power person, and then you set up a very worksheet-like thing. In number 2, you say, in my current situation, the exact goal I hold for blank. You're talking about a current situation, right? Like if I have a problem with, you like to use the word Charlie, so I'll just say Charlie. Okay, so here I am working on Charlie. Bill, okay, thanks. Here I am working on Bill. Then I get to number 4, am I still working when it says, when a goal activates something in me based on fear, blah, 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 all the way down, list the pseudo-solutions my mind has engaged in. Am I still talking about Bill, or have
I'm working on that situation with Bill, and now so my mind's got a whole construct, perceptual construct, that I call Bill, and the normal person thinks it's outside of me. Someone who's been doing the work realizes that the body that they picture as Bill is a product of the firing of brain cells inside of them, and tells them more about their own mind than about Bill. So from that step 2 on through to the end of the worksheet, I'm looking at all of the aspects. I'm like stepping back, and you've seen projections of, let's say, a night sky and all the stars, and they kind of turn the sky, and you see the stars from this angle and that angle and this side and that side. Well, that's what we're doing in the worksheet, is saying this power person dynamic is so deep and so controlling and so complex that we want to look at every aspect of it. So from that point forward, you're going through... Go ahead.
You're looking at it all with power person dynamics fully in consciousness, but using a present-day person or issue.
Correct. And establishing awareness of how my power person dynamics are playing out with this person today that, of course, seems to have nothing to do with what happened when I was 4, but is really controlled. My response and my perception, decisions, and behaviors are really controlled by my 4-year-old brain.
Right. Got it. Okay, good, thanks. Because I didn't know whether I was going to go back to a power person or stay with my Bill. Okay, so you stay with your Bill. All right, now in number 6, you list a lot of pseudo-solutions, and it's a fantastic list. Some of them, though, have sub-things. How do I put it? Let me go down and find one. Okay, go to 35. Number 35. Oh, and number 4 does it too. Checkbox, judge self, checkbox others. That's number 34. Okay. Number 35, make up stories about...
So in this situation, am I pointing my upset toward myself or toward others?
Okay, and
I'm going to make a decision there. And it might be both.
Okay. Yeah. I was just, okay, good. I had to go back and look at it because suddenly there were no numbers and there were just boxes. And I'm thinking, why is this one separate? Why does this not get a separate box? But I'm getting it now. Okay. It may be just a matter of formatting, or maybe this is just a good road bump to hit. it slows you down. It's like having to read what carbon-based memory is again. I mean, I was explaining to a friend, a new person has come onto our Zoom. The person is a cousin, a daughter of a cousin, first cousin of mine, who is a mime and a ballerina and an artist and a student of Christian Science and Byron Katie. She looked at your tool. She looked at the physical paper and said she got one of those things, French call it frisson, where she got goosebumps. She said, this is a true thing. This is a thing with integrity. I forget the word she used, but man, she said, I'm dying to get on the
She had the brain cells
came.
to see it.
She did a worksheet yesterday, right away. First thing, she does a worksheet, and the miracle happened. I got to tell you about this. I'm getting off track, but I have to tell you about this. So she does a worksheet on a terrible fear she has held for years about an old friend who adopted a daughter who was of a different ethnic skin color. And
right.
She said the un-PC thing of, where's your daughter from? And the mother, she perceived that the mother, her hackles went up. And she took it as a racist remark. You don't ask the question, where are you from, indicating you're not one of us or something. Anyway, right now, that's not a PC thing to do. Back then, she didn't know it wasn't a PC thing. For years, she has felt terrible about this friend. She tried to friend her on Facebook and establish a connection. No response. So she did a worksheet on it. And the enlightened goal, among other things like doing more worksheets, was to compose a letter to this friend and find a way to communicate with her. So she wrote an email, and she sent it. And as soon as she sent it, the friend responded and said, oh, my gosh, I can't even remember this. I can't believe you've carried that around for years. I have always admired you and loved you, and I'd love to be in touch again. And it was just a big nothing. And talk about big things are nothing. That was just the best lesson. So I hope that's okay that I took a tangent. But
no, that's perfect. That's perfect. You remind me, and we've shared this on the show before. There's a guy up in Michigan who was in his late 60s or early 70s, and he found out that his brother out in California had cancer and was not going to live for long. And they hadn't spoken for, I don't even remember, 30, 35 years, something like that. And this guy didn't have a driver's license anymore, and he literally got his lawnmower fixed, and he drove it to California to see his brother, and he couldn't even remember why they stopped talking.
Oh, my God. Yeah. That's
how bizarre is it? How bizarre can we get as humans? So
I know.
So no, I think that's perfect as a reminder.
Yeah. Her fear had grown so great that she was paralyzed. And, this isn't a big episode of psychotherapy and telling an old story. She just did one worksheet. And she realized it was possible. Her level of upset, she said, that's not high enough. My level of upset is about 15. And at the end of it, she said it was down to 5. And she said, now I could breathe. So, anyway,
that's awesome.
That's it. I know,
it would be interesting for her to step into and do the codependence work and see where she bought that kind of fear, because I guarantee there's a power person dynamic behind that.
Oh, absolutely. She is so gangbusters. We talked a long time this morning about, the whole talk about the gifts of COVID. COVID reconnected me with my family via Zoom in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise, because they're pretty outlying relatives with different lives going in different circles, and who's going to drive way to northern Maine where she lives. And here we are on Zoom, and we're getting to know each other, and then she's doing the work. And she's been doing her work in other ways all along, but this was tremendous. And she wrote back and she said, not only has this happened, but I just cannot wait to be part of this group every week. So she's really in there for her.
That's sweet.
A good haul. It is.
Yeah, one of the most common comments I get from people, and it's usually people who've got the brain cells, who've done the most work. And she sounds like she's been, as you said, she's been doing her work for years. But what happens when they bring this together. You know, one of my doctorates is in holistic philosophy. Like, how does the whole thing work together? And one of the most common comments I get from people is, oh, my God, everything I've always known, I now understand. Oh, that's where that fits. Oh, that's why that. Oh, that's how that happens. It just puts it together. So I'm delighted that it's touching her and touching you and supporting opening a new connection with somebody to be cherished.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
I know, it's just great. So, okay, well, one more comment about the Power Person Worksheet and our classes. Not that we're going to do this. We're done with doing it, right? We're going on to do the other 2 classes that you had already planned, right?
We're moving forward. We'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah, okay. Because I think what happened is I couldn't be articulate at all until I had actually gone in there and started doing the worksheet. And I wondered if in the future when we do it, we have everybody have it out in front of them and we're actually each doing one as you talk through it so our questions come up. Maybe that wouldn't work. I don't know. It was just, I felt as if we were kind of dead in the water in our responding to you. Here you were cranking, and we were sort of like falling asleep or losing our place or, you know, just not engaged. I personally, I'll speak for myself, just couldn't get engaged till I pulled it out this morning, and instead of my worksheets, I did this one, and anyway, that's just a thought of another way to present it. So,
yeah, and it's a totally new tool, in its first stages of development. So, I'm going to need to learn to teach it, and how to present, how to process it. And so right now it's at the stage of building the brain cells. And, of course, with the depth that each step goes, people are going to confront, even in just hearing about it, it's going to stir and confront lots of things, which is going to, bring up unconsciousness for people and resistance and all sorts of neat things. So.
Yeah. Okay. Totally unrelated question. I have been feeling so much like that Fenelon author who saw the muck of his own darker side, that the thought came to me that I could just plain dismiss my ego mind, use it as a functioning tool, but dismiss it. I see a thought. It's not a nice thought coming, and I see it going, and I notice it. Is that what you mean by the thinker apart from the thought, that we've stepped away enough to be an observer?
Well, that would be the first stage of it, but I don't think that just stepping back and becoming the observer is enough, because although I can observe it, it's still operational. And it's operational because it has, remember one of the lines in the Course that says, you may wonder why you must look upon your hatred and realize its full extent. And it's because these things don't stand on their own. There's something underneath them. And so what this Power Person Worksheet is about opening a space to look at what's underneath what we're observing. And it's as you begin to forgive or remove what creates that construct. First stage is I have to be able to step back and observe it, or else it's got me by the face and it's just, I believe that's the way it is. So as I can step back and observe it, then I'm going to start to disassemble it through forgiveness or whatever other tools it might be, as this woman did. She sounds like she went into a sort of a responsibility communication circumstance. So once you can observe it, you go, oh, that's what I've been doing. Then it's to take any and all of the other tools, including the rest of the worksheet, to disassemble it so I free my mind from it.
That is good. I guess I ask that partly because I feel as if I will never be able to stop these thoughts. There are so many of them. They're instantaneous trigger reactions. They may be very mild, but I realize I've made a judgment about someone, walking down the road for some reason, or the way someone speaks or presents herself or himself. there's just so I'm picky. I guess I'm really looking at how, just looking at the dark stuff. Yeah, well, all of it needs to be, what I've been practicing is saying, oh, I'm doing that. I choose another way to look at this person, and then I intend to be open, practice being open. Usually I feel a shift of being willing to be open, but you're right. The issue isn't gone. It needs a worksheet. It's like I could do worksheets all day long.
Who couldn't? That's where, if you go back to Yeshua, and they were like, okay, get us through, help us get finished. And he said, you can't storm the gates. You just can't do it. You got to do your work. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants it to be, I want this done in 5 minutes. I have $5. Tell me everything you know. It's like,
yeah. It's just
you realize the enormity of the history involved.
Yes, you do.
They talk about, I forget who brought forward the quote, but those who refuse to study history are bound to repeat it. Those who refuse to disassemble the power person dynamics are bound to repeat them. And that worksheet is really a look at history and what's happening in light of history with current events.
Right. On so many levels, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Another thought related to something we talked about yesterday, about the difference between needs, wants, and goals. I had a history professor once who made it very clear to us that when people react and form sides and get into war, they don't have needs, but they have felt needs. And he used to use that adjective, felt needs, to make sure that these were not actual needs, these were their reality. And I've never forgotten that. But what he was doing was talking about perception and limited reality as opposed to actuality. I just wanted to report that. He was a brilliant man.
Right. So the word, just to be clear, is F-E-L-T, as in feeling, felt needs.
Yeah, felt
okay.
Or perceived.
Got
you
it.
could say perceived.
Makes sense.
Felt needs.
Yep.
Yeah, I wondered if that would be useful or not. I mean, I shouldn't say I'm not trying to rewrite your worksheet. Probably I am. I don't know. Anyway, since we're beta testers, I was a beta tester for a music program for years, and I'd call up and say, I'd love it if it did this, or this doesn't work. And so if I seem a little bit arrogant, I apologize with my ideas.
I'm with you. You'll notice that once again in the intensive, I made the request last night of if you've got feedback, please, I want it. That's how it develops. I can't develop this on an island by myself.
Well, it's huge. No wonder you can't. No, we're beta testers. I love thinking of it that way.
Yep.
It's an honor to be a beta tester. So one last question, if nobody else's hand is up.
Just one thought before we move on to that last question. What I hear when I hear this term felt needs is this is something that an individual has either through the automatic decision system or purposely, consciously elevated to a very high level demand.
Oh, yeah. But the word need is a high level demand, I think. Unless you're starving to death. But I mean, most things are not needs. They are wants and goals that people use.
Right.
And you said it yourself. You said you can manipulate people by using that word.
Oh, sure. No question.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good input.
Thanks. And the other question is, I had a friend in college. It was an old lady who worked the desk in the music building, and she suffered from terrible anxiety. And I worked as a volunteer in hospice for many years. Tim and I both did when we were in Connecticut. And one of the things about terminal patients with Alzheimer's, or maybe they weren't terminal, but they had Alzheimer's, was anxiety. And it was anxiety that could not be, there was no comfort for them.
Right.
Because there was no reasoning with them. You couldn't do a worksheet with them. What is that? Do you have any idea what that is?
Yeah, I think how I would categorize it is, if I've got somebody that's been living in the message, don't make me look at my life, don't make me feel that, give me a fifth of scotch, I don't want to deal with that, let me just go to sleep, I don't want to look at you or deal with you right now. The mind finally gets a message and says, I'm not allowed to show this person what's going on in any way, shape, or form. So now we have Alzheimer's. The brain just stops functioning. But what underlies the reason it's not functioning? Decades of anxiety undealt with. Don't make me look at my fear, my hate, my rage, my anxiety, my pain, my trauma, my responsibility. Don't dare. And so what do you have? You've got years of anxiety, and the instruction of the mind says, don't show me, no, I don't want to deal with this. And so finally the mind goes to the extreme of the instructions that were given and says, okay, well, I won't show you anymore. That would be my take.
So you're saying that anxiety itself is the cause of Alzheimer's, are you?
Well, I would say it's a big factor. I wouldn't say it's the cause of something like Alzheimer's. My take would be that it is the unwillingness to look at what's happening in our lives because it is based in thought disorders that produce anxiety. The act of telling the mind for decades, no, 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 and the mind finally obeying. So the result to me would be created by the fact that we weren't willing to look. I mean, everybody has thought disorders that produce anxiety. Some people deal with them and some people avoid them. And my take is, in the long run, and this can go right down to our physical senses. I remember working with a guy in Texas, this goes back 30 or so years ago, and there was a guy in his 60s, and he'd worn hearing aids since he was, I forget, 9 or 11 years of age, something like that. And we were doing a still point session. He was really working on this, having difficulty hearing. And he got in touch with being whatever age it was, 9 or 11, whatever age, and he was a little bit overweight, and people called him Piggy.
Oh, no.
He just hated it. He didn't want to hear it. And within about a very short time, 10, 15 minutes, he was looking very startled and looking around the room like, what's going on? I said, what's happening for you? He said, why is everybody shouting all of a sudden?
Oh, my God.
Nobody was shouting. At the age of 9, he had turned his hearing off. And here he is at 65, and he's finally allowed his hearing to come back on. And it sounds like people are shouting. So, the senses follow instructions. It's basically a form of hypnosis. If you watch the hypnotist, or if you get a good hypnotist, and they get somebody in a somnambulistic state of hypnosis, they can give that person verbal instructions that would match literally to the T every symptom of Alzheimer's, and that person will play out Alzheimer's. And then on command, if the hypnotist's command is, and all of these symptoms will go away when I raise my hand and snap my fingers, they raise their hands or snap their fingers, and the mind goes back to normal. But you spend years going into a state of autosuggestion, of self-hypnosis. No, I don't want to look at that. No, I don't want to feel that. No, I don't want to deal with that. The mind's going to finally say, all right. So that would be my take.
Boy.
And beyond that, as I'm looking at or playing in this world of I don't want to feel, I don't want to deal, I don't want to look, I'm sending messages to the different parts of my structure that are debilitating messages. And so let's say if it's I don't want to look, and this person ends up being blind, they're going to do behaviors, like for instance, they might decide that they hate carrots and they're not getting any of the nutrients in the carrot that feeds the eye. And so now there's a reason, quote unquote, a reason physiologically why the eye deteriorates, because it doesn't have the nutrients that it needs. Why the brain deteriorates, because, I gave my brain instructions, I don't want to do this, until the brain, knowing how it works, is, well, okay, I guess we'll have to stay away from that, and let's do an excess of that that really raunchy fat that comes from palm oil. And so somebody says, well, see, we can see what's wrong with the brain. See, it's all filled, if we go in there and scrape it out, it's all filled with old palm oil. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Oh, my gosh. Michael, I had a thought. I don't know if this thought is useful, but you didn't record last time's meeting. I know I'm going all over the place, but this just popped into my head. Jeanie said in her email that you were going to re-record that class. I'm
going to redo it because the recording didn't take last night.
Yeah, but I was thinking so much of the recording was stuff you couldn't replicate, like people's questions and things. So that puts an awful burden on you, unless I wonder if it could be like 2 hours of, all right, guys, we're all getting out our worksheets, read through this, do it personally, and have it be sort of a guided worksheet with all of us following right along and actually writing. Those would be among the instructions that you would give. And then you would have a map of your whole, you probably have it mapped out anyway, but you were just simply reading it before, weren't you? And we weren't really participating. I guess that's the word. We couldn't quite engage because it went by too fast, and yet not fast enough in some ways, because we can read. You didn't have to read them to us and have us not doing anything. I don't know. I'm just going on and on.
I'll put that in the hopper. And again, being as new as it is, it's a process of building brain cells. And so the main objective is to build the brain cells. And so I'm looking at doing another recording that will help with building the brain cells, and I'll put that in the hopper as a possibility.
Okay.
Although I have the concern that it might be a 6-hour worksheet then. So.
Oh, yeah, I get it. Right. That's true. Well, people could always pause it. You're not doing the worksheet. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, Michael, I almost don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway, it's a huge assignment for you to have to do that all over. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. I think I've finished. So thanks for all your answers.
All right. We'll give that young man Tim a hug for us. Tell him we said hello. And
I will.
We'll see you on Saturday.
Okay.
1 o'clock. Okay. Bless you.
Okay. We do have another hand up, but then I also got a response from our friend Angela in Kenya. And she said she did go back and listen to the archive on April the 5th. And as always, she appreciates the thought and consideration given to her issue. She says, I am encouraged to think that the world will indeed change once I apply the tools consistently. These past few days, I've tried to stay away from video clips and online posts that feed my chills. And yes, Michael was right. My chills means fear and anxiety. And that alone has made a difference in how I experience life in that time. It's true I may have hung out at the same level of work for a while, close to 17 years, but it's a testament on how effective the book and the worksheets have been for me. Nevertheless, I am glad to know that the possibility of going to another level through the Codependence Intensive lessons, and I will check out the website for more information.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Now, has she got access? I mean, does she have access to a computer that we could actually converse with her, or if she has more questions to refine them? Maybe make that suggestion.
That I don't know, but if she's going to do the online intensive by Well, I guess those will all be downloads until the next live one. I don't know. I'll have to ask her. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. It'd be nice to hear from her and personalize the support.
Well, our next caller is area code 417. You're on the air.
Welcome, 417. Give us a name. Where are you calling from? I know you're calling from somewhere around Theodosia. Is this maybe Magda or Julie? Hey there, young
somewhere
lady.
in the Ozarks. I had a couple of questions. I have one thought, and I was wondering how my question might fit into that thought that I have.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you the thought first. And the thought is...
I'm ready.
Okay. I have read where women, whenever our awareness is about everything going on around us, in the house and out of the house, and everywhere else the kids are.
Right.
All right. And then men, when their awareness is basically what's in the same room with them, what they're facing, what they're dealing with at the time. How on target is that?
It sounds just a little bit sexist to me.
Well, I'm not talking about sexist. I'm just talking about the way our brain and our body, our sensory perception is. As a mother, I know that when the children were outside, I knew where they were and what they were doing. And, for example, one time when the grandkids were over and the house was full of everybody, the grandkids just disappeared, all of them. And it was snowy and icy outside, and all of a sudden I knew they were at the pond. Everybody took off to the backfield after the pond and got them home before they froze.
Right.
Okay. And
but my take would be that that's not an exclusive thing to the female gender. Now, what you triggered in me, I can remember back. I had a chef way back when I was in the restaurant business. Goes back 50 years ago, and I used to just boggle his mind because I'd have a business trip. I'd be gone for a couple of days. I'd come back, and there was a big event happening, and I had my finger on the pulse of it, and I knew what we needed and such. And I'd say, well, it seems to me that maybe we're a little short of this item that we're going to need for this event coming up. And he'd say, well, no, actually, we don't have any of that left. And I'd say, well, isn't there some of that in the freezer over in the corner of freezer number 4? And he would always just go, like, how do you know where all that? How do you keep track of that? It's like, well, it's awareness that I think we all have the capability for. It's just what's important to us. And I think that as a caregiver, a mother who's in that level of responsibility, and particularly in regard to her children, does that. But then I think about my children when they were small. They traveled with me. There was one time period where I had my 2 kids on the road for a year, full time, just the 3 of us. And I held that kind of awareness with them as well. So I think it has to do with our functioning minds, the goals we have, the purpose we have in mind, and the level of awareness we have of our feedback mechanisms, our senses.
Okay,
so I wouldn't put it in one category or the other, would be my take.
Okay. Well, most men they have tunnel vision on their work and what they're going to get done and how they're going to get it done, whereas women have to use their sensory perception. Yeah. Okay.
That's an interesting thought. But you might want to look at whether there might be any projection to that thought, and if there's any aspect of your life where you ever had tunnel vision.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure. The second part of this is my experience with the worksheet.
Right.
I just seem to be able to, I don't seem to be able to get past getting to a point where I can kind of relax, because I'll take care of one issue and then here's another one. And then before I can finish with this one, there's another one. And before I can finish with that one, here's another one. And it's just like I'm going in circles here.
Well, if you go back
and I don't seem to be complete with it before I'm facing another issue.
No. Well, if you go back and you read the book of Job, you'll see that that's very well pointed out. That principle is very well pointed out in the book of Job. And Job is basically the story of a man in a healing crisis. And if you remember, there comes a point where his process is so intense, which is what I'm hearing you describing, one issue after another, the Hydra effect. His process is so intense, he asks God for an intermission. Do you remember what the intermission was that he asked for? Give me time to swallow my saliva.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
That's a pretty intense process he was in. and yeah, when you start doing your work, especially when you really start comprehending and really start moving, I mean, each issue that you open up, you get to deal with all the underlying dynamics of that issue. And when you, especially if you're the first one in your bloodline, if you're the early adopter, if you didn't have parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and cousins and uncles and aunts that were all engaged in your work, and you're the first one who really steps in and does it, it's an intense process. It can be, there can be times of tremendous overwhelm when you start opening parts of your mind that nobody in your bloodline has ever opened. And you decide to come into conscious relationship with those parts of your mind. And you let those energetic patterns that have created perhaps some horrendous diseases in your bloodline, when you allow those things to process through and process out so that you rid yourself of those diseases and or the possibility of it, it's an intense process. It's just...
Okay, well, I'm going to
there's nothing else that compares with it in terms of the intensity. You think about someone who's decided to do a career and they're going to become world famous in, whatever field. They're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever. That's nothing compared to stepping into your own carbon-based memory consciously with awareness, building the brain cells for the tools to clean up literally every generational pattern. I don't know, were you on the show a couple of weeks ago when I read a piece that I'd written? It was actually in my still point session that I was noticing that my jaw was clenching. And as I noticed that my jaw was clenching, I was given some input on dealing with that. Were you on the show when
I remember you talking about your jaw clenching, but I forgot what you said.
Well, let me just share with you what I wrote as a result of that, because it applies to all of us, and it gave me a new perspective, a new level of insight as to what needs to be done, what it takes to really clean up a life. So the first thing that came in that particular still point session for me was that, I'm contemplating life, and you've heard me say it many times that Yeshua says, I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. And so the first opening in that particular session, I'm just looking at my notes from it, was the instruction or the understanding that life is love flowing through a cell. And that when we do things that restrict love from flowing through a cell, we're shutting down life. And I realized, that was all part of the insight that came when I realized that I was clenching my jaw, and that along with that clenching of my jaw was the left side of the upper palate that was also contracting, and that my parietal bone on the left hand, top of my head was also contracted and locked down. And what I realized was that was me restricting life moving through me. So then I was specifically given an instruction to make a request. And the request was this: let all the pathways for your love, speaking to the Creator, let all the pathways for your love be opened in me. for life is love moving through me. And then as I'm, focusing on, and each time I took my focus away from what my jaw was doing, I would just unconsciously, I'd just be back to that clenched position. And what I was shown was, or what I was told, download I got was, that this clenching of the jaw is something that had gone on for many generations, and it had literally set this restrictive energy, this energy that restricted my life flow, had set that in the bones of my body. And so the next piece of information I was given was energy set by generations in bone takes time to release, time to heal, and or it takes grand willingness. And then I was given this next set of thoughts. If you do not know what I mean by set in bone, just pay attention to your thoughts. The next time you clench your jaw, your gut, or your fist, how much suffering and how much clenching in 30 generations, which is 1.6 billion of our ancestors. Are you open and willing to embrace all that has been locked in bone? Mitakuyasin, which is a Native American phrase that means for all my relations. So it's like, am I willing for my whole bloodline to open and process through that? And my instant response was yes. I'm willing to open every shuttered jaw, every gut, and every fist, every held breath in my bloodline, so that all the pathways for the power of the active presence of the Creator's love can flow through me. I realize I can only rely on that. For my minuscule self that thinks it has power to handle every dissociated energy in just my own bloodline, surely I jest. And now I understand why I must wholly rely on the presence of love.
Yeah, I remember when you got to the part about it being set in bones, I was thinking, oh my goodness, that's why I'm having such problems there. And
you're an early adopter. Who in your bloodline can, and we've only got a few seconds left, so we'll just carry the conversation on until the show cuts us off. But who in your bloodline could have ever had this engaged in this conversation? Mom, dad, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, great-grandparents, who could have had the conversation?
Right. Thank you, Michael.
So when you're the early adopter, it's like, you're like the person who, that story about the farmer who goes out to the town center and brings in workers at 8 in the morning, and then others at 4 in the afternoon, pays them the same, and the workers who go in at 8 are like, why don't we get more because we worked on, and the creator or the farmer says, I gave you what I told you I give you. Isn't it up to me to give generously to someone else if I choose to do that? And then if you look a little later in that particular scripture, the creator goes on to say, or the farmer goes on to say, and you're going to use my generosity as your excuse to be hostile? Kind of like, are you nuts? So